Good evening, good morning, wherever you are. My name is Thomas Steininger. I welcome you to Radio Evolve, our weekly webcast for consciousness and culture. I'm very happy to have with me this week Peter Mary. Peter, hello, welcome to the show.
Hi, Thomas. Thank you. Honored to be here.
Peter, you are Chief Innovation Officer of the Ubiquity University, and I think we have to talk about what a Chief Innovation Officer is. And I'm also very curious to hear more about the Ubiquity University. You're also a fellow of the Center for Human Ecology in the United Kingdom. And I think for many people, you're also known as the founder of the Center for Human Emergence in the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. And I invited you to Radio Evolve because you are one of the persons who is really thinking how we, as people interested in consciousness and culture, can respond to a crisis that we're all in, the corona crisis. And I think it's more than the corona crisis. The virus is just the beginning of something, and we don't really know what we're in, but it seems that we are going to quite interesting times right now. So let me start with the personal questions. How are you doing in this crisis?
Oh, thanks. I'm doing okay, actually. Most importantly, me and my family and people around us are healthy. So that's the key thing. We have to adapt because my way of working hasn't changed much because at Ubiquity we're a virtual organization. So we're used to working online. We have a team spread around the world. So the way of working hasn't changed. But, now I have 3 boys who are 16, 14 and 9. And so they're at home all day now. And my wife works at the health ministry. So she's busy. So we split the day half, which means I have less time. But we're actually busier than ever because, of course, people are shifting to online and doing things online. And as you mentioned, this initiative, Humanity Rising, has burst onto the scene, which is making us busier than ever, but is very hopeful. And otherwise it's, I've been giving talks for years and years about the chaos point where stuff breaks through and stuff, breaks down at the same time. And one of the slides, and I do stuff on climate, on food, I go through different issues. And one of them's on pandemics. And it says,
oh, really?
Yeah, it says, so 1918, we had this flu pandemic. It killed so many people. We're now due for another one. What's going to happen? How are we going to respond to that? Yeah. And so here it is, and it's, the thing is about this, you get a single issue that comes to the forefront, but it doesn't mean the other ones go away. So all the other ones around climate and everything else are still there, burning in the background. But this has somehow, I think, made people stop and think a bit. And that means it gives us all an opportunity to exploit the moment where people aren't running around like crazy in their normal busyness, to present, ways of thinking and solutions to doing things differently which people might be more receptive to now than when things seem to be normal.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much going on at this time right now, because of course there's also a spiral of fear. There's a lot of also kind of questions, conspiracy theories, ideas what this is about. There's just also concern about many people are losing their jobs, particularly in the US. Many people who are coaches lose their way of life right now, and we don't know where we're going. So it is definitely a big disruptor. And on one hand, it is a chance for some new beginning. But first, we also have to take care of the situation. It is a pandemic. There are really people dying, particularly in the UK. There are really a lot of people dying right now. And in New York, we know a lot of people are dying right now. So there are many things to respond to right now. What do you think are, when you look at this situation, and when you ask the question, so what is important to see here right now? What would you say? What is important in this kind of very unusual situation we're in to really be aware of?
Well, it's important to, like, as you say, stay connected to the realities as well. So make sure that we're feeling along with, the pain of what's happening, that we don't disconnect ourselves from that we keep our heart open and stay connected with our compassion to what's going on. At the same time, whilst looking at, okay, how do we make sure that the pain and suffering that people experience at this time isn't in vain, and that we can actually take this opportunity and build something better for the future than what we had before. And to me, that's the best way to honor those who have died due to this crisis, would be to use the opportunity to move into a world that, would maybe make it less likely to happen again, or at least would make it a world where, all of life can flourish more than it was beforehand.
So I'm really curious, because I haven't talked to anyone who kind of had a PowerPoint presentation about a coming pandemic and thought about what this as a big disruptor would mean before this pandemic was happening. And when you were thinking about, and of course, you had the example of 1918, the flu pandemic, that was a world pandemic. What was your thinking? What would a pandemic like this create? What is the danger of this? What is the opportunity of this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the nature of these kind of moments, which I would always describe as a non-linear change moment, so they're where things happen fast and breakdown happens fast and breakthrough happens fast, hand in hand, is that you can't really predict what the future is going to be that emerges from it. So the key is in these moments to notice what is breaking down and to be paying attention to what it is that's breaking through. Help what is breaking down to let go gracefully in terms of systems and structures and ways of thinking and ways of doing things, whilst putting in place the conditions for the new solutions that are emerging to accelerate, basically. So it's really holding both at the same time, holding the process of breakdown and staying connected to that. Because what you always get in these moments of amplified stress is you get a kind of regression, often a fall back to more, you mentioned more fear-based and more contracted ways of thinking and responding. And at the same time, you get a breakthrough to more holistic or integrated ways of doing things. So it's like having a bubble, having a balloon and squeezing the balloon in the middle. You get a big bulge at the bottom and you get a big bulge at the top, basically. And the bulge at the bottom, you could say, is a regression triggered by fear. And the bulge at the top is the breakthrough response triggered by, the life conditions asking us to come up with new solutions.
Let me ask you, I mean, right now, what we're seeing is a pandemic and obviously an imminent economic crisis. But you're saying there's a breakdown and possibly a breakthrough. What breakdown are you seeing? What are you seeing when you say there's a breakdown happening? What is breaking down?
Well, you could take, I think across sectors, what we're seeing is, on the one sense, how in the healthcare sector, how maybe our current way of understanding and engaging with health and well-being isn't adequate to the kind of challenges we're going to be facing. So how do we, at the moment, we're very dependent on experts solving the problems for us. And yet there are ways, if you look at more information medicine and working more consciously with consciousness, there are ways for us to actually look after ourselves and heal ourselves consciously without always needing to lean on the experts. And there's been a number of initiatives I've seen coming through, one which was a sound-based resonance. It was basically a sound file that you listen to that has encoded within it information that boosts your immunity to corona, and has been used successfully with AIDS and other and viruses and other things. Those kind of approaches, in a way, what they do is in the same way that 3D printing decentralizes production, It decentralizes healthcare, puts it back in people's hands in a way, rather than us always being dependent on others. And this is, I think, part of a bigger trend that we're going to see going on, is this centralization that has gone on into what, say, Ivan Illich called expertocracies, where we've outsourced our expertise to all sorts of financial experts, healthcare experts, education experts, which means we don't trust ourselves anymore. We don't trust our own knowing about what's right and what's wrong in those areas. And there is a role for the experts, but there is also a role for enabling people to gain more ownership over these different parts of their lives, and not just trust because, you know, my financial advisor says this, or because the economic experts say that's the way it needs to be done. So as, for example, if we take to economics, the recent book I wrote called Why Work has a whole section on how we put in place local economies that act in a way as a net to catch us when the mainstream economy fails. And that not only is it a kind of rescue mechanism, but it actually enables us to lead more fulfilling lives, because we're able to express different parts of ourselves that we can't normally express in the mainstream, purely profit-driven economy. And it builds resilience locally, both economic and cultural resilience. So things like, how do you create parallel economic systems? We don't have to replace, you know, a global economic system, but how do we create parallel economic systems that work at the appropriate levels? So things that need and can be traded locally. What's the economic system that best serves that, you know, or regionally or nationally or internationally? And how do we enable those to work in parallel? Because now what we're noticing now is our dependency on the current global financial system is meaning that there's lots of people who could be contributing really positively, who are now at home because there's not enough money, well, to pay them, you know. Well, if there's stuff that needs to be done and there's people who could do it, and somehow those things aren't being matched up, it means that the economic system that's meant to be doing that is failing. Right. So how do we create other systems that enable people's expertise and passions to match a need in the world? Because our current economic system is clearly not enabling that. And it's the way it has been enabling it up until now has been purely around an assessment of value driven by financial productivity, rather than a more holistic understanding of value, which would nurture human well-being and ecological health. So, I mean, you could almost pick any sector and look at it. Let me take education, for example. When my eldest son started secondary school here, within a year and a half, he was showing burnout symptoms, was at the doctor. And he was saying, oh yeah, the problem is that your son is both sensitive and intelligent, and that's the worst combination for school. And I stopped for a minute and I was like, well, wait a minute. Surely that's the best for a healthy human being, is to have both sides. He said, oh yeah, I see quite a few people coming through my surgery who both are sensitive and intelligent, and they suffer for the school system. So when I heard that, I decided we needed to get a different school system, and found an example of one that was already working in the Netherlands called Agora, got it to the town where I live. And so both my elder sons are now in that school, which is where there's no formal classes, there's no testing, there's no homework, there's no grades. It's project-based. They're in coach groups, and they're doing a lot of it with virtual resources as well. So for them, it wasn't a huge shift to move from the work in their classroom to working from home. In fact, one of the things they've done is asked everybody to create their desks at school that feel homely, so they stay in the same place, so they bridge the worlds between home and school. And so what you're seeing in education is a lot of the realization, how do we enable a personalization more of education now, so that the people can do the work they need to do at their own pace, using the resources that best fit their learning style, rather than a factory style of education where everybody sits in a classroom and moves through exactly the same process at exactly the same time with the same teachers. And so we're waking up to, I think, in all sectors, other ways of doing things that in a way this crisis has forced us to adopt, simply because the systems that we had in place can't function because of the limitations around corona and things.
Let's go through the different fields that you just opened up: the health system, the economics, the education. When we just talk about the health system, I mean, there is a lot to be seen right now. On one hand, there's a virus, and this virus has also, in some ways, it's a health challenge that really also needs our classic response, or our health system in a way where there is, I think, a lot of gratefulness that we also have, particularly in Europe, a functioning health system. You see a non-functioning health system, at least much more not working functioning health system in the US. And you see also the discrepancy that this creates. You see that this virus is not neutral in relationship to wealth, because there are people who can basically take care of themselves. And you see that people who are at risk in their life, on one hand, it's age, but on the other hand, it's also people who have a healthy or not healthy lifestyle forced on them. So in the US, it's very shocking to see that the Black community is much more in danger, because they, on one hand, are forced to a lifestyle with unhealthy life conditionings that makes them much more at risk. They have no insurance, and they have also basically no way to respond to this. So there's a lot of questions that opening up of our health system, but there's also the question opening about experts, because we are having a whole discussion about the virus. We have epidemiologists, we have statistics, and we have also a relationship to death, where people rightfully ask the question, okay, is this really the right relationship, where we just basically say nobody can die, but the question how people are dying is not really part of the discussion. So there are a lot of questionings opening up. What you see is going down here, and what you see is maybe an emerging different possibility. Yeah,
we had a wonderful talk given to us in our webinars for free series at Ubiquity by a woman who was a naturopath. Mm-hmm. And she was making the point about the difference between what she called germ theory and terrain theory.
Okay.
And terrain means the land or the ecology in a way, is that, and from germ theory, you're trying to attack the germ, kill the germ, basically. From terrain theory, you're trying to make the terrain healthy so that the germ can't get at you so seriously, right? So from their perspective, all their focus is on prevention and is on making sure that your whole system is as healthy and vital as possible, so that if the virus does get to you, that you only have minor symptoms, basically. And so there was her husband, for example, got it quite early on. She also has a couple of kids. And as a naturopath, she was treating the kids and herself in the naturopathic approach, and they never got it. So they were in proximity to her husband, but they never got the virus. And it's an approach that shifts from a reductionist mindset, where we're focused on this kind of idea that we're going to kill the germ, we're going to defeat the germ, to, hey, the germ is there. How do we make sure that our systems are strong enough to be able to defeat it should we encounter it? So how do we build our own resilience as humans? And this points to, what you were talking about, which is how we make sure that everybody in our society has access to a healthy lifestyle, essentially. I mean, it was shocking to me when I first heard that, was it 70% or something of the patients in intensive care were obese, were overweight. I'm kind of, well, so that means maybe these kind of lessons will help us understand how we'll be able to reduce the pressure on our healthcare if we can focus much more on prevention and making sure that people are generally healthy as a whole, rather than focusing on trying to treat the problem when it emerges. So I think that's maybe one of the lessons that's going to come out of it, is because there's going to be more of these viruses, right? They found 27 viruses under the ice cap, which is in the process of melting, that we never had to face before.
Okay.
And they're now exploring those. So as the ecology shifts under the pressure of climate change, we're going to see more of these unexpected health challenges emerge. And we can't, we can either just rush around and, try to catch up with them the whole time and create a vaccination 2 years too late, or we can build the fundamental resilience into our individual systems and collective systems. So one of the things, I've been fascinated about is these, the predictions around what's going to drive the next wave of the economy.
Mm-hmm.
There have been these theories called the Kondratiev waves. And the current Kondratiev wave we're in, with the wave that's driving the economy, is mainly about information technology. And they've been predicting, the book was from a few years ago on the sixth Kondratiev wave, that the next wave to drive the economy is going to be on psychosocial health, on the health of the individual and the health of the collective, because our current system is making individuals and collectives so sick. Is putting so much stress on them. And so what's going to be needed in the next phase is to get everybody individually and collectively healthy. And that a big part of that is going to be a holistic approach to healthcare based particularly on information medicine, which is strongly related to consciousness, because again, it puts it back in the hands of people, enables them to take some responsibility for it. So this I think, crisis is a very good example of why that prediction is quite likely to be true.
And as you in this already touched the economic sphere of this, because the economic breakdown that we're experiencing right now, of course, is triggered by the corona crisis, but it's much deeper than that. And it seems that you really think that it also shows a general deficiency in the way how we do economy, and that this is somehow related also to a kind of a generalized, as I understand, humanity system that holds the economy together, and the alternative ways that also are needed in order to respond.
Yeah.
Do you understand you right in this?
Yeah. I mean, it's really what it's exposed is the vulnerability of a centralized economic system. That once it gets hit, it ripples out throughout the whole system, and everybody gets affected everywhere. So there is no safety net to catch people when the centralized system breaks down. So it's going to be, what it's going to trigger, I think, is a part of a general trend, which is a move away from centralized systems, like we're seeing with production, for example, and the advent of 3D printing and other technologies that are decentralizing certain levels of productivity, to find more decentralized approaches to economics, which means that if the centralized system breaks, the whole system doesn't break down, that we're still able to match people's needs with stuff that needs to be done. So, I mean, for ages, when I first did my dissertation in human ecology in 1996 on the future of work that informed the Why Work book, I was studying, local economic and trading systems, LETS systems, or these micro currencies that exist in local environments that enable people still to be able to function and trade goods and services with each other outside of and parallel to the existing economy. Or what's come to the surface, I've noticed now in a lot of the commentaries, is this whole idea of a basic income. Again, well, that was part of my thesis back in 96. And it's part of that. The reason I released the Why Work book last year is because suddenly everybody seemed to be talking about it again. And again, there's this whole, well, look, all these people are without income at the moment. Wouldn't a basic income be a good way of dealing with that? And there are certain conditions that need to be in place for a real basic income to be successful. And the reason that they've failed in some of the experiments so far is because of the conditionalities they put in around them. But when you do that, again, what you're doing is you're making people less dependent on the centralized system. When you have a basic income, You're enabling people to make more conscious choices about where they want to put their energy, what they want to spend their time on. Whereas at the moment, when you're dependent on a central economic system and it breaks down, you have a bunch of people and businesses suddenly without any income through no fault of their own, and not because there's not a need. So if a market is meant to be about literally going to the market and finding something you need, well, the need is there and there are people are there with the need, but it's not being matched effectively when you're in these turbulent times. And the turbulence isn't going to go away. I mean, Corona will eventually go away, but, you know, we're going to be hitting a series of crises. Some will be health related, some will be climate related. It's just the times that we're in. So we need to make sure that our economic systems have the resilience to be able to respond to that. And so this is an opportunity for us to have that conversation as well, which is, you know, you mentioned Humanity Rising is part of what we're trying to do with that initiative.
Yeah. In fact, I also would like to come to Humanity Rising and to Ubiquity University, because the situation that we're in, it also has a strong synchronizing effect. There's some overall something that we're together in, and it seems to be also a global conversation around this that is exactly also about what is breaking down here, what is not working here, where do we have to go. And it seems to be very much awareness-based. And also for the internet, so social media, this awareness function works in a completely different way. And what you are doing in the education system at Ubiquity University, and I would like you also to talk about this, seems to be part of an awareness-rising initiative to bring people with all the concerns that you're just talking about together, not based on particular ideologies, but based on a shared interest in the conversation of all of this, and bringing together via mediums like this, via online gatherings, via what you're doing in online university, to create a global conversation about where are we, what is going down, and are there alternatives, and how can we talk about this alternative? So I would like to share a little bit what Ubiquity University is, and also what your Humanity Rising initiative is about, and how this is a contribution to the situation that we're in right now.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I mean, Ubiquity University has been going for a number of years now, and really the impulse behind Ubiquity was to set up an education system that equipped people with the mindset and the tool set to deal with this kind of reality, to deal with a world that's changing rapidly, and where we need to create social innovation in all sectors, basically. So how do we equip people with that? And an integral approach to things has been at the core of it from the beginning, meaning that we need to make sure we work with not just skills that people develop, but also with mindsets and multiple intelligences like emotional intelligence, the collaboration intelligence, or the whole person, basically. How do we enable the whole person to develop themselves so that they are equipped to be able to respond effectively to these kind of conditions and remain creative so that they can come up with solutions? So, at Ubiquity, we have degree programs people can follow, but people can also just come in as lifelong learners and pick a course here and there. And what we evolved over the last couple of years is a competency-based approach that means that you can demonstrate specific skills that you've got, get recognition for those skills by global industry standards, and build yourself a competence portfolio that means that you are equipped for working in certain sectors or being able to get the kind of qualification that you need. So rather than the educational institute determining your learning pathway, you're put at the center of your learning pathway, basically, and you're given a GPS to navigate the learning you need to be able to get your passion and expertise connected to a need in the world so that you can really make a living making a difference. So that was the kind of framing for Ubiquity. And most recently, what we did is we built this social platform for change makers that we call the Ubiverse. And it's like a kind of Facebook for change makers, I'd say. So it's a place where people who are interested in trying to make a positive difference in the world can get together, meet each other, find the learning resources they need, and know that we're not stealing their data like Facebook are doing, and that they're not going to get bombarded with ads and things. So the Ubiverse is a kind of home for global change makers, as it were. And just about 2.5 weeks ago, a few of us were having a conversation, and this idea emerged around, so at this point in time where people are stopping for a moment and thinking about things, there's an opportunity to drop in ideas about how we could do things differently and not go back to the way things were before. So why don't we do some kind of online summit that would bring together speakers with solutions, organizations who are working on solutions, and other people who are just interested to learn from them and about it. And so we thought, oh, well, somebody else must be doing this. So we asked around, and nobody seemed to be. And all the people we talked to said, yes, that's exactly what's needed right now. And there was a huge amount of synchronicity around it, which is always a good sign to me. The name dropped in at 5 o'clock one morning, and I was like, oh, Humanity Rising. Of course, it's like we all need a lift. It's like we need to, in a way, create a future that we all can feel proud of. Because at the moment, not many people feel proud of humanity. It's my sense. We all feel we're kind of down a bit, and we're making a mess of things, and we got these ecological crises. And so how do we lift humanity to do something that we would all be proud to tell our grandchildren about, for example? So we started putting out feelers, and literally within a week we had a whole list of organizations and speakers wanting to participate, and now we're up to a reach through the partner organizations of about 4 million people. So there's going to be huge potential to engage people in these different ways of thinking about the world, but also very concrete solutions. And we're going to be running 6 key innovation tracks around things like healthcare and education, around manufacturing, around really, I think 6 different capitals, we're naming it, like natural capital, social capital, financial capital as one of them, and have these tracks really focused on not just a conversation, but we say turning a conversation into actions that make a difference. So really, and we're gonna have a whole design change process in these streams, so that it's not just people talking to each other, but there are actually steps you go through to get innovation out there, to get solutions and pathways, and to get the reach out into the mainstream. So we don't want to be just talking, to the inner circle anymore. And the nice thing is, at the beginning, we had the likely suspects join, the people who would obviously say yes. And then more recently, we've had World Economic Forum interested. We've had INSEAD, the big French business school, interested. We've had the Club of Rome interested. So suddenly we're finding that there's, it seems to be, it's just one of those things that seems to be the right thing at the right time.
Just a very simple question.
Yeah.
What do you try to create? What is your vision of this? I mean, I see all these organizations coming together. I see the different threads, but I'm sure there's a leading vision where you see something is possible right now, and something where you can make a contribution. And what would you say? What is this? What is possible through an initiative like this in a time like this?
I think it's the possibility now is really to get solutions that have actually been worked on under the radar for the last 10, 20 years even, and get those amplified and out into the mainstream. So that where a lot of innovators and people in sustainability have been working hard on solutions in all these different sectors, as we've seen, it's been very hard to get any large-scale implementation. So I think this tear in the fabric of reality, if we think about it, this opening up that's making people stop and question, means that there's an openness for thinking about new ways of doing things that might not have been there before when everyone was caught up in their normal busyness. And so our hope is that what this will do is launch really an ongoing process of innovation around key challenges, drawing people in to learn about them, and amplifying the solutions and getting them out there to, both on the one hand, existing leaders who could actually have them implemented, but on the other hand, create new systems that can take over the helm from the old ones. Mm-hmm. On the one hand, you've got influencing the existing system, and on the other hand, you've got social innovators, social entrepreneurs, creating new systems that people start to adopt. That means that the old systems can relax and hand over power, as it were, to the new systems as they're mature enough and they prove their effectiveness.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I'm not supporting the idea that basically this is now necessarily the complete change of our destiny. This is it is an open moment. It is an open moment, and it's obvious there's a big disruption going on, and it's obvious people are listening. People are listening because it seems to be obvious. I really try to be careful not to say it is obvious. It seems to be obvious that a lot of things are not working at this point, and the crisis with the virus is just the epicenter of something, and many people are aware that a lot of things maybe need a deeper thought. That's why I'm really excited what you're doing, because there are a lot of people in different ways thinking about alternatives, and I hear from many sides that all of a sudden people and institutions, by the way, are listening right now. And at some point, we will get to a new normal. And we don't know what the new normal will be. And it's very much about this very moment that we're in, also to co-create, to co-define what maybe the new normal can be. So it is a time window that we have right now, a creative time window, I would say. An initiative like yours can be also, it can create an imprint of how destiny unfolds in that sense. So it is really something, not that necessarily now everything will be different, maybe not. Maybe it will fall back to the old. I have no idea. But what is, I think, obvious, that there's a possibility in the air. There is a listening in the air. There is an insecurity. Also just the fact that the world came to a still stand like never before. People are at home and are in a situation where everyone somehow is not in the usual routines. All that are, I don't want to take it too metaphysical and too far out, but it is like this. And to have people coming together and just use this moment in time to say yes, and there are also people who have been working alternative. Let's now look. Maybe there are things that are working, maybe there are things that are worth giving a try. Let's come together and let's talk about this. And that's how I understand what Humanity Rising as an initiative is about. Would you agree that this is kind of the thing that you're doing there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I would add is that the thing that this, in a way, this crisis has made us see is that should we as humanity globally decide to do something significant and deal with a significant problem, we can. You know, look how people's behavior has changed over the last period of time. I've often thought, looking at climate change, and it's not as visible to people as something as dramatic as this, that really we almost need to treat it as if we're in a wartime situation where you really kind of say, okay, we're going to now make all of these factories do this. You know, we direct people and our resources to do the things we need to do to avert a catastrophe. And it now makes us realize that, wow, we could actually do this if we wanted to. I mean, we did it globally to try to tackle Corona. We could do it to tackle other things as well if we wanted to. So on the one hand, it's, you know, a realization that our governments, if they choose to, can make something happen at this scale. And then at the other hand, you've got what we need to put in place then is the ability for the bottom-up movement to come with the solutions and the experiments and really massive R&D, right? Research and development that needs to go on now to come up with the new ways of doing things that I think when you stop and have conversations with people as they slow down from their busyness, most people feel makes sense. You know, so what could we change about our lives, our societies to increase the individual human being's well-being? What would we need to change to increase the vitality and the flourishing of our of our global ecology and planet and other life forms. These are all things, to have peaceful societies. If you sit down with people, they go, yeah, we want those things, but we haven't really had the time to collectively to stop and go, yeah, but how do we actually get there from here? Mm-hmm. Right? And that, I think, is the possibility that we have now, is to put a flag in the future, put a stake out there in the future, and show that there's a possibility for us, if we choose to actually create a different future than the one that's currently unfolding for us.
I really like the addition that you brought to the conversation, that this is a moment maybe for significant change. Because it's obvious also that on one hand, as we discussed, it seems to be obvious that something significant has to change, and people seem to kind of really be open to that. And that, again, what you brought in, and which I find again and again a very inspiring part of the conversation right now, that the coronavirus, however you judge what the governments are doing, it shows that governments can do something. And that we globally, not just governments, by the way, we, civil society, people in Italy, how they responded as a nation, in many ways, how the British responded to the health service, that we can respond as a culture to something. And one of the biggest blockages to the climate crisis was our thought we cannot really change something. And this has been a kind of a limitation that we have put on ourselves, our doubt that we can do. Yeah. And somehow this is out of the window, at least right now, because it's proven, no, we can. Yeah. So if that's the case, also situations like how do we want to live? What economy do we want to create? And do we really want to kind of bring the climate to breakdown here? Are questions that we can talk about in a perspective, we can change something here. And that changes the conversation itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And that's an extremely empowering, realization and scary for those who are currently in power, because they've been forced to do something. And what they've done is revealed their hand, which is to say that, if we really want to, we can, and we can do it collectively, globally. I think that what they're worried about now is what we're going to demand that they do next. And that's what we have to put the pressure. That's what we have to put the pressure on them to do.
And for that, we have to have a conversation. And for this conversation, we also have to find places to come together to have this conversation. That's how I understand your initiative. Can you just explain a little more, as we are coming to the end of this broadcast also, how can people connect to what you're doing?
Yeah, thanks. So Humanity Rising, we're going to announce it's happening on the 22nd of April, which is Earth Day. And people on that day will be able to go to humanityrising.solutions, and we'll be able to sign up for free to the event. We're making it donations based. So pay what you can to support both, on the one hand, the delivery of it, but 50% of any donation people make goes to the good cause of their choice. So all of the partner organizations will be sending it out to their lists. 50% of anybody who comes through their network will go back to those partner organizations, because so many of these initiatives are struggling now with Corona and things as well. What we're really trying to do is lift the movement as a whole. So people can come in, they can sign up on the 22nd of April from then, and then we'll be launching the summit on the 22nd of May will be the first talk. And at the moment, Jane Goodall will be part of that. Charles Eisenstein will be part of the launch. And there'll be a number of others on that first day. And then we'll have a rolling summit. But it's not just going to be one-way traffic. This is the key. That's why we're hosting it on the Ubiverse. That's this social platform for change makers. You'll be able to join groups with other people, contribute your thoughts on the solutions, and start to really build around the inspiration that we may have got from the speakers into serious social innovation tracks for anybody who wants to be involved. And then from the university side, basically anybody who wants to get credit, academic or professional diploma credit for the work they're doing in those streams can get that. So it's not just a talking thing, and it's really an action learning process where together we're going to be going through a process of visioning, of backcasting, of scenarios, of innovation tracks, using the best technologies that we know that are out there. And we're going to open it up and enable people to participate in that. And if they want to get recognition for competencies that they develop in that process, be able to build a competence portfolio that can increase their employability. And we're really looking at how these different generations can interact with each other. So on the one hand, you've got the experienced experts. On the other hand, you've got the bright, open thinking of the new generations and how those can interface with each other to really build something together. So yeah, 22nd of April, the launch, humanityrising.solutions, and 22nd of May will be the first talks.
Peter, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you for the invitation. You're very welcome.